Hello. Today I'm going to introduce you to two fabulous mystery stories. They're both very exciting, quite different, and I think you're going to really enjoy them. They're both award-winning stories, and the first one is The Mennyms by Sylvia Waugh. This is part of a series, so if you enjoy the first one, then you've got some other treats ahead. And the second one is Antonio S. and the Mystery of Theodore Guzman. Let me first introduce them by just reading you the blurb on the back so you can find out how exciting they are. First of all, the Mennyms. The Mennym family live at 5 Brocklehurst Grove in an ordinary house on an ordinary street where they go about their ordinary lives undisturbed. But the Mennyms are far from ordinary. They share a surprising secret that no one has ever come close to discovering until now. When a letter arrives from Australia, the Mennyms are plunged into fear about their mysterious existence because it's about to be exposed. And then our second mystery story, Antonio S. and the Mystery of Theodore Guzman. Antonio S. is a boy who knows all sorts of things. Scaraboe the Magnificent is a magician. Professor Kettering is a doctor. They live together at the top of a grand old house built long ago for a duke. But who is Theodore Guzman, the secretive old man who lives downstairs? What mysterious things does he know? It takes someone like Antonio S. to find out. So let's start our first introduction, and it's to The Mennyms by Sylvia Waugh. And it starts with a letter, chapter 1. Dear Sir Magnus, seems strange me writing a letter like this to a sir and all that. I must admit I don't know how to begin. You see, I've just inherited, among other things, the house you have rented all these years from my Uncle Chesney. Leastways, you did rent from him until he died a few months back. Now it appears that, as his sole kin, I am to become your landlord. Fancy me a landlord. And landlord to a real live sir at that. If I sound a bit naive and over-impressed, can't be helped. I'm a fairly ordinary bloke, and I am impressed. I'm not a millionaire or anything like that, but I'm a darn sight richer than I was a while ago, and I'm tickled pink to own a property in England. About me, since you must be wondering, I'm just past 30, unmarried, and with no intentions in that direction. And I must have spent more time with sheep than with people for the past 10 years or more. Now, what with the land here I've been left and a tidy bit of money, I'm thinking of coming for the first time to the old country to see a bit of the world and, if you've no objection, to pay you a visit. Not as a landlord, lording it, you know, but I hope as a friend to you and your family. And from what I can gather, you've been tenants at Brocklehurst Grove since Aunt Katie died nigh on 40 years ago. Uncle Ches was a wee bit vague about how you came to take over, but then Uncle Ches was vague about most things, except money. I see you paid his agents the rent, and a fair rent at that. He had no cause to grumble. Still, you never did get to meet him, so I won't speak no ill of the dead. I suppose you must be getting on a bit by now. 40's a considerable number of years. I hope this letter finds you hale and hearty, Grandpa. I understand from the papers the agents told that you are blessed with a wife and family. Tulip struck me as a curious name for a woman, but real pretty when you come to think of it. I hope you and all of yours are thriving. It's my purpose to come your side late November. I don't want to intrude at all, but I'd love to meet all of you and see the house where Great Aunt Kate was born and lived out all her days. Uncle Chess used to shake his head and say she was a character, but he never did specify how. I look forward to enjoying your company and hearing all your memories. I hope you will look on me as part of your family. I have no other family of my own. Yours very sincerely, Albert Pond. And chapter 2 is titled Consternation. The letter from Albert Pond shot through the tightly sprung letterbox of 5 Brocklehurst Grove on a wet October morning, before any of its residents had stirred from their beds. It was Saturday. "Sounds like the postman's been," said Vinetta with a yawn. Joshua turned in his sleep and grunted. He didn't want to wake up. His tattered left leg was wrapped to the knee in an old bath towel, and he was not looking forward to the day ahead. "I suppose I'd better go and look," said Vinetta, pulling herself up out of bed and putting on her slippers. The curtains showed a pale daylight, so she went downstairs without switching on the light and picked up the airmail letter from the doormat. An airmail letter, she thought with some surprise. The only letters the Mennyms ever received were of the business sort: cheques for Sir Magnus and other letters from his publishers, household bills and receipts, catalogues for Appleby, and occasional flattering offers to take part in prize draws. Never personal letters, and never letters from abroad. Vinetta looked at the envelope more carefully. "It's for Grandpa," she exclaimed. In the best bedroom at the front of the house, Grandpa Mennym was still asleep. His elegant white moustache flowed over his lips. He had been born knowing 1,000 pearls of wisdom. That's a lot of knowledge. So he found it necessary to lie and think deep thoughts every day of his life. His advice was not always taken, but it was deemed to be well worth hearing. Magnus was, physically, the least active member of the family. He never left his bed. His only mobility was in one purple velvet foot that dangled from the counterpane. The twins, Poopy and Wimpy, sometimes tried to rouse their grandfather by swinging on this tempting appendage, but soon the foot would simply grow forcefully rigid and kick the two of them to the other side of the room. Then they would scream the place down as if the impact had really hurt them. It was one of their favourite pretends. If their mother, Vinetta, was by when this happened, she would say briskly, "Don't make such a fuss, you two. It'd take more than Grandpa's foot to knock the stuffing out of you. Go and play with Googles, or ask Appleby to show you her stamp collection." When Vinetta came to Grandpa's room on this particular October morning, the old man did not stir. The purple foot dangled limply over the edge of the bed. "Grandpa," said Vinetta loudly as she opened the curtains, "there's a letter for you from Australia. Isn't that where the owner lives?" Grandpa looked at her sharply, focusing the black button eyes that never closed in sleep, but could vary from the dull opaque of dreaming to the bright gleam of intelligent thought. "Yes, it is," he growled, not at all pleased at being aroused from his slumbers. "Wonder what he wants." In 40 years we've never heard directly from him before. She's paid the rent, hasn't she? Of course she has, said Vinetta indignantly. Besides, it might not be from him. And who else in Australia would have heard of us? Sir Magnus gave his daughter-in-law a withering look. From the dressing room next door, Granny Tulip called plaintively, "What is it? What is it now?" She had chosen to sleep in a small room because she was often wakeful at night and liked to get on with her knitting, sometimes in the wee small hours. She was ceaselessly active. All day she would sit in the breakfast room downstairs knitting garments for the whole family. Her needles moved with fascinating speed. All of her movements were quick and economical. Even her speech was rapid and purposeful. Within seconds, she was at Grandpa's bedside. She was, as always, fully dressed, wearing a blue and white checked apron. She was a very neat little woman with pure white hair and a deceptively tolerant, friendly expression on her fine-featured face. Without a word, she took the envelope from Grandpa's large, mittened fingers and deftly opened it. Taking care of the bills was, after all, her job, and, until the letter was opened, who was to say that it was not some unusual demand for money? What she read through her little round spectacles made her gasp in surprise. "Well, I never," she huffed and read on as the other two watched her with keen curiosity. "Just imagine," she exclaimed. "Fancy that," she muttered as she reached the end of the second page. "What is it, Gran?" demanded Vinetta at last. "He's coming here. He's coming next month to see us all." A dull horror came over the room. "He can't be," bellowed Magnus forcibly, speaking from the depths of his great knowledge and his mound of snowy white pillows. "He must be about 80 by now. He won't be gallivanting all the way from Australia to see us after all these years. He didn't bother when he was 40. He certainly won't bother at 80. You haven't read the letter properly, woman." "Don't you woman me," snapped Granny Tulip. "I've read it all right. It's not Chesney who's coming. It's his nephew. Chesney's dead. The new owner is called Albert Pond. This could be serious." "He owns the house now," said Vinetta doubtfully. Magnus looked at the two women bleakly, his black eyes turning dull and lifeless. "Yes," he said in a grim voice, "if that's the case, he owns the house. It could be fairly argued that he owns us too." "We pay the rent," said Tulip firmly. "Every month on the dot, I send a cheque to the agents. There can't be a better payer than us. Whenever they've increased the payment, we've paid the extra without a murmur. And we haven't asked for repairs to be done. We are ideal tenants. The new owner should be satisfied with that. If he ever finds out what we really are," groaned Grandpa, "I shudder to think what he might do." So saying, he turned his back on the two women and pulled the counterpane right over his head. What an exciting beginning. Well, that's just 2 chapters, but I hope you're going to be able to finish this.